Hello and welcome to One Step Closer Fitness. Today's video I'd like to deal with muscular imbalances. Hopefully it's something that a lot of people may not be aware of muscle imbalances and the issue, and hopefully it'll be something that people will never have to suffer the extreme consequences of muscular imbalances, but it's just something I want to address in today's video. Now, we all have some level of muscle imbalances, even primed athletes, even bodybuilders. Phil Heath, 5-time Mr. Olympia, Kai Green, Arnold Schwarzenegger in his prime. They all suffered some level of muscular imbalances. Nobody's perfect. Now, the easiest way to describe it is you got to look at your body as one unit instead of different parts making up a structure. The body is, in essence, one kinetic chain, and it wants to work as one unit. And muscles within that unit, they want to work in force couples. Muscles don't really work in isolation to other muscles. They work in force couples. And one example to give would be if you look at it in terms of your bicep and your tricep. Hopefully now you'll be able to get this. So we'll say you got your bicep, obviously you got your tricep. Now these two muscles want to work together. So we'll say on a bicep exercise, when you flex your bicep, you're actually going to extend your tricep. No problem there. But if you do an exercise that's an extension for your tricep exercise, like an overhead press, you're going to be flexing your tricep, and correspondingly you're going to be extending your bicep. Now that's okay, but for example, if you're doing a workout regime and you're doing no tricep and you're doing all bicep, so ultimately your bicep is in a constant state of flexion throughout the routine and your tricep is in a constant state of extension. What's going to happen, and it's not something that's going to happen in the first week or in the first month, or it mightn't even happen in the first 2 or 3 years, but eventually what's going to happen is that the muscle that's in the state of extension, the muscle that hasn't been worked, is going to become lengthened and it's going to become weak, and the bicep muscle, the muscle that's always been flexed, is going to become dominant. And that's a situation you don't want, because the muscle that's weak in this scenario, the muscle that's been extended, it becomes lengthened, it's going to snap. Now this is something that everyone really should consider. Gym goers, people doing resistance-based training, even people at a desk job. Sitting for 8 hours a day is something that will help facilitate muscle imbalances. The body wants, in many ways, to take the path of least resistance. You know, if you look, we come from a position of flexion. You know, in the womb we're over like this, our shoulders are hunched. It's in some ways the easiest path for the body to be in. Now if you're at a desk job, you're sitting down, your hip flexor is going to be in a constant state of flexion. Okay, constantly sitting down, and likewise then your glutes are going to be in a constant state of extension. So over time, it may take years to come to fruition. Hopefully you never will. But the hip flexors become dominant because they are always flexed, and your glutes and as well your quads, because the seated position facilitates them to be in a constant lengthened state, they become weak. And what a lot of people might find is that the weak muscles then, they'll snap. And also people with desk jobs, a lot of people do complain, I've experienced it myself, lower back pain. And one of the issues here is that because the glutes are in a constant state of extension, they become weak, they can't do their job right. And as a result then, the back has to carry a far greater workload than what it normally would, because ultimately the glutes aren't firing right. The back then has to compensate for the weak glutes, and over time, again, it may take years, hopefully it may never happen to anyone watching this video, but the back then has to overcompensate for the weak glute muscle, and the back becomes overactive and it goes into a state of spasm, and that's not something you want to experience. So for people in the gym, the one thing you want to do is, for every action there's an opposite and equal reaction. For every yin there's a yang. For every flexion there's an extension. you want to work all your muscle groups. For every push, for every chest exercise that's done, you want to do a back exercise. For every bicep muscle you do, you want to do a tricep exercise. You want to keep those muscles in a state of unison. So remember, every bench press should be met with a row. It's not something that has to be done on the one day, but you just want to keep your body, all your muscles firing at all times. You want to keep all your muscles activated. It's something in the earlier days of my own training, I did all push exercises. I did all bench pressing and I neglected my back. And what happened there is my back became weak. And again, at a desk job all day, you'd find yourself, without even knowing it, you find yourself just, your shoulders become hunched over and you've got desk job posture and your upper traps become activated, and they, over time, again, it could be years, over time they become overactive and they also become weak, and they can give way to go into spasm and seizing up in you. So if you are at a desk job and you're not a gym member, there's loads of exercises on YouTube that you can see to correct your upper cross syndrome and your lower cross syndrome. But one of the main things you can do is get a foam roller, and you can also do some stretching in the evening time, notably on your hip flexors and squats, to help balance up the difference between your dominant hip flexors and your glutes. So, but for gym people primarily, you want to work push and pull together. You do not want to neglect your back muscles. You don't want to neglect your rowing motions. And also when you're working on your leg days, okay, it's great to do your hamstrings and your quads, the isolation exercises, your hamstring curls, your leg extensions. But also what you want to do is you want to do squats and as well maybe deadlifts, but concentrate first on squats so that your legs and your lower body are working in unison. You don't want to, for example, concentrate for a couple of months on leg extensions and working the quads, because then the quads become the dominant muscle in that area and your brain then gets used to firing in the neurological messages into your quads. So we'll say if you're a soccer player or a rugby player and you go in for a tackle, if you've been in the gym for a couple of months training primarily your quads and you've been neglecting your hamstrings and you've been neglecting your squats and your glutes, it could be the quads that could go, because your brain is just so used to firing in the messages into your quads that they could snap under pressure, and that's not something you want. You want to create a body that is used to working together as a unit, used to working in balance. And another great thing to do, and it's a no-brainer, I'm not inventing the wheel here, is you always want to incorporate your core work into your workouts. Even if you go to the gym 4, 5, 6 days a week and you might only train your core 2-3 times a week, nothing wrong with that, but my advice would be before any session, just at least do some light core work so that at least your core muscles are fired up. They're the area of the body that they're there to take the tension. It's the center of your body. It's not called a core without a good reason. It's built to take the pressure and the stress, and every movement that we have ultimately emanates from the core. So you want to have that area, not only you want it strong, but you want to have it activated before any workout, so that whatever movement you're engaging in, ultimately the movement comes from your core. Now, probably the best example I have in a sporting scenario would be Ronaldo. Apart from the six-pack, he's got a very, very strong core. And one of the easiest ways to tell is that when he lines up to take a free kick, there isn't much backlift in his right leg as he goes to strike the ball. A lot of people, to hit a free kick as powerful as Ronaldo, would have to have a much greater backlift to try and generate the force. But his force comes from the core. So that's why he's got very little backlift, because ultimately it's not the foot that's generating the power, it's the core, and he's trained the core to such an extent that it's firing on all cylinders, and I've no doubt it's working at an optimum level. So again, I'm hoping anyone watching this does not have to suffer the ultimate consequences of poor training techniques, postural considerations for people at desk jobs, where your upper cross syndrome and your lower cross syndrome. Hopefully no one will ever have to put up with that. It's nasty and it's not nice. And for gym goers, remember, for every push there should be a pull, because then you're just training your body, you're training your neurological pathways to fire in the signals into the muscles the way it was designed to, in one unit. Again, overall body workouts, total body movements in the gym, box jumps, things like that, are very good because they train the body to work as one unit, which is ultimately the way it wants to work. It does not want to have one muscle become dominant over the other, because it's not necessarily the dominant muscle that's going to collapse under the strain. It's the antagonistic muscle that ultimately becomes weaker. That's the one that's going to give way. So hopefully that you found this video of help, and until next time, goodbye.